It was a hearing that was combative right from the very start.
You can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch. Not on our time. No way. And I told you about that, Attorney General, before you started.
You don't tell me.
Yeah, I did tell you because we saw what you did in the Senate.
A hearing with Attorney General Pam Bondi that got so heated, one Democratic member left the hearing room.
The hearing kicked off with a lot of tension from the get-go. Right off the bat, one member of the Democratic Party decided enough was enough and walked out while the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, was speaking. The room was filled with heated exchanges, particularly when Bondi was confronted about her opposition to a resolution condemning anti-Semitism, especially given her personal connection to the Holocaust. That's when Republican Tom Massie jumped in, grilling her over some redactions in the Justice Department files, particularly regarding Leslie Wexner, the founder of Victoria's Secret. Massie calling her out. Wexner's name was put back in the documents. What a coincidence, huh?
Les Wexner is in this. Now, your your deputy attorney general said, oh, well, he appears hundreds of times in the files, but he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking. Not to prostitution, not to money laundering, child sex trafficking.
What's really remarkable here is that Bondi has managed to spark bipartisan outrage, which is almost unheard of in today's highly polarized political environment. Both sides of the aisle are furious about how she's handled the Epstein files and her use of power within the Justice Department. This isn't just the usual political drama where people express concern and then swiftly move on. This outrage is brewing into something much more serious. We're starting to see formal calls for criminal investigations, demands for her arrest, and serious warnings from senior senators suggesting she might have to face consequences for actions that legal experts say could amount to federal obstruction, potentially leading to penalties of up to 20 years in prison.
And apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through. I'm not going to get in the gutter for her theatrics.
Afterwards, several of those survivors sitting down with NBC's Hallie Jackson.
Show me your hands if you were satisfied with what you heard from the Attorney General today. Nobody. There wasn't even an adult in the room that could apologize for the damage done.
So, there's this situation unfolding with Pam Bondi, and it's pretty intense. People are really fed up with her, and that includes survivors who are speaking out about the whole Epstein scandal. After a recent gathering, some survivors sat down with a reporter from NBC, and when asked about how they felt about Bondi's comments, not a single person raised their hand to show satisfaction,
saying they just want accountability.
We've heard several times our government say, we're moving on from this, and that just enrages me.
And despite all the theatrics, Bondi did reveal more could come in the Epstein saga, telling Congressman Chip Roy that there are still pending investigations in the case, but she did not say who they are focused on or when they might be resolved.
It's clear they're looking for someone to take responsibility for what the Justice Department has put them through, and they're not going to let Bondi's theatrics distract them from that. There's been a lot of frustration aimed at the government, especially since they keep saying they're moving on from this situation. It makes sense that people from both sides of the political aisle are angry because this isn't just a partisan issue. It's about protecting children and holding powerful individuals accountable. Both Democrats and Republicans want the Epstein files to be made public. Democrats think they'll reveal wrongdoing by powerful Republicans.
I didn't ask Merrick Garland anything about Epstein, not once. When he was
weak sauce.
And also, I want the record to reflect that, with this anti-Semitic culture right now, she voted against a resolution condemning.
Oh,
he is Jewish. I just want to be clear.
So you want to go there, Attorney General? Are you serious? Talking about anti-Semitism to a woman who lost her grandfather in the Holocaust.
And Republicans are convinced they'll show Democrats involved in the trafficking. Yet, here's the catch. Bondi is the one standing in the way of both parties getting those files. She's been using heavy redactions to keep the names concealed, which has really put her in a tight spot politically. During a House Judiciary hearing on February 11th, 2026, lawmakers grilled her for hours about why those documents are so heavily edited and why the Justice Department has gone after political rivals of the president while seemingly ignoring Epstein's co-conspirators.
You're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm going to answer this question.
Reclaiming my time.
Mr. Chairman. This isn't how this works.
Can I have my time back?
Mr.
Chairman.
The gentlelady can give her answer.
Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out
where
of
he's
over
listed as a co-conspirator.
It turns out Bondi released thousands of pages of information that hasn't sat well with anyone. With everyone frustrated and no solid support backing her, the fallout for her is bound to be severe. The recent hearing brought to light some seriously troubling behavior from Pam Bondi. She was grilled for hours, and instead of showing any remorse for Epstein's survivors, she just kept throwing shade at Trump's critics. It's alarming how she dodged responsibility, especially when so little has been done to hold Epstein's associates accountable. This lack of empathy has really struck a nerve with the public.
Is an email that was sent by the victim's lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to redact. A list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And they're getting phone calls. A lot of these people didn't want to be known. And we know you touched the document because you redacted one name.
It's something that people across the political spectrum find simply unacceptable, showing a total disregard for the suffering of exploited children. But the drama didn't stop there. The hearing took a dramatic turn when it became clear that Bondi's department might have stepped way over the line. Democrats brought forth evidence suggesting that her office had been spying on members of Congress who were trying to access unredacted files related to Epstein. It's hard to believe, but apparently they gathered search histories and compiled it into what lawmakers called a burn book dossier. This wasn't just some typical political maneuvering. It looked more like a calculated attempt to undermine Congress. Let's dig into what that actually means. Allegedly, the Attorney General is accused of using the Justice Department's surveillance tools to keep tabs on what Congress members were reading and then leveraging that information to launch political attacks against them. This crosses a major boundary. Instead of just playing hardball in politics, it feels like she weaponized government surveillance against lawmakers who are meant to oversee her department. This could be one of the most significant breaches of the separation of powers we've seen during Trump's second term. What really resonates with people about the burn book revelation is that it underscores a suspicion many have held, namely that the Justice Department under Bondi isn't functioning as an impartial law enforcement entity. Instead, it seems like a political tool used against anyone who poses a threat to the president or his circle. It's quite something how an attorney general can communicate such a clear message to everyone involved. Congress members, journalists, whistleblowers, and ordinary citizens alike. The message, if you dare to hold us accountable, prepare for the federal government to turn against you. That's pretty much a textbook definition of authoritarian governance. Ironically, this is coming from someone who should be safeguarding the rule of law in the United States. Senator Dick Durbin has stepped in to directly caution Bondi, telling her that she's going to have to explain her actions in the Epstein case. This includes allegations that she instructed FBI agents to flag any mentions of Trump in the related files. It's not just a vague political complaint. This is a serious warning from a senior Senate member about the potential legal repercussions of her actions. Senate Democrats are gearing up for a fight with Bondi, calling out what they see as her extraordinary obstruction and disregard for oversight. They've made it clear they intend to use hearings, subpoenas, and Freedom of Information Act requests to demand answers as soon as they have the congressional power to do so. Then there are those troubling allegations about document removal, which add a really explosive layer to Bondi's crisis. Legal experts have pointed out that tampering with court-ordered document production is no small matter. It's a federal crime under obstruction statutes with penalties reaching up to 20 years in prison. This isn't just a maximum penalty for extreme cases. It applies indiscriminately to anyone regardless of their role in the government who interferes with what the court has ordered. Commentators have also highlighted that if any claims about Bondi or her staff removing or messing with these documents turn out to be true, we're looking at textbook obstruction. Prosecuting her wouldn't just be possible. It would be mandatory under any fair application of the law. It's truly wild how everything seems to be piling up against Pam Bondi. making her one of the most exposed figures in Trump's administration. She's like the weakest link in the whole legal and political bubble that Trump has built around himself. A big part of this is the redaction scandal, which has laid bare her legal troubles. The way those documents were redacted tells a tale that can't really be dressed up as a simple mistake in prosecutorial judgment. When the Justice Department puts out Epstein-related documents, but blacks out the names of possible co-conspirators, and at the same time, they throw significant resources at prosecuting 6 Democratic lawmakers over a video that ticked off the president, you just can't ignore what that says. Clearly, the focus here isn't on justice or the evidence. It's all about the political interests of the president who appointed the attorney general. Those redactions aren't just random. They're targeted at names and information that could be damaging to people Trump wants to shield. This kind of politically motivated redaction provides quite a bit of evidence of power abuse, suggesting that Bondi is using her position to keep certain information from the public for political gains rather than legal ones. Add to that Bondi's own history, and it paints an even clearer picture of her actions. Before becoming the Attorney General, Bondi was the Attorney General of Florida, and she made a choice back in 2013 that has stuck with her ever since. Her office was weighing whether to join a multi-state investigation into Trump University when she got a campaign donation of $25,000 from a Trump-affiliated foundation. Not long after her office dropped the investigation, and then she endorsed Trump for president. This whole chain of events, a donation from Trump followed by dropping an investigation into his business followed by her endorsement, sets up a pattern that critics claim has carried over into her role as United States Attorney General. It's straightforward. Trump gives Bondi support, and in return she protects him. Pam Bondi's recent actions have raised some serious eyebrows, especially when it comes to how she seems to be protecting powerful figures, including Trump. The Epstein file scandal really highlights this troubling trend within American law enforcement. It's not just about redactions anymore. Bondi is apparently using tools from the Justice Department to go after those pushing for more transparency. Take the congressional search histories collected from the Epstein file viewing facility. It's an issue that brings up significant concerns regarding federal law. Members of Congress should have the right to do their oversight duties without worrying about being monitored or having that information used against them. The idea that Bondi's department might have gathered this data and weaponized it during a congressional hearing is quite alarming. It shows a worrisome willingness to step over civil liberties and constitutional norms, something that goes way beyond typical political maneuvering. Another unsettling detail that popped up is the instruction for FBI agents to flag any mention of Trump in the Epstein documents. That definitely raises a lot of questions. If the Attorney General is telling agents to sift through millions of pages to highlight anything about the president in a sex trafficking investigation, it makes you wonder what their motive is. In a legitimate law enforcement scenario, that kind of flagging doesn't really hold water. The most logical reasoning behind it seems to be to shield the president from any unflattering material before it goes public. But using the FBI in that way, that strays far from their actual mission. The job of the FBI is clear: to investigate crimes, not to act as a political shield for the president. This departure from their core responsibilities is something that should worry people from all political backgrounds. When the Attorney General shifted FBI resources away from one purpose to another, she ended up crossing a line into what constitutes obstruction. Her performance during the hearing really showed just how serious things are for her. Not only did she refuse to apologize to Epstein survivors, which was a pretty big political blunder, but it also gave a clear look into her true priorities and values. It really painted a picture of the kind of Attorney General she actually is. When a public figure, especially someone in her position, has a chance to show compassion for the victims of child sexual exploitation, but instead opts to attack the political adversaries of the president who appointed her, it says a lot. It shows that her loyalty to the president takes precedence over basic human decency towards the victims of some of the worst crimes in American history. That insight is a political blow, providing her opponents with a particularly strong argument that she cares more about protecting Donald Trump than about seeking justice for exploited children. There's also this connection between the Epstein scandal and her role in hiding the Jack Smith classified documents report, creating a pattern that amplifies both scandals. House Democrats have accused her of suppressing Volume 2 of Smith's report without a valid reason, which ties into the pattern she's creating of wielding her authority to conceal any evidence that could harm the president and his supporters. This behavior is shifting Bondi from just being a controversial political figure to what some critics are calling the central player in a larger cover-up culture during the Trump era. The Guardian has reported that some experts are saying she's turned the Justice Department into Trump's private law firm, going after his foes, stalling investigations, threatening allies, and using the department as a tool for presidential power instead of letting it function as an independent entity. Then, of course, there's the fact that CNN noted she went almost an entire month without speaking to the media after facing backlash over an internal Justice Department memo that confirmed Epstein's suicide and contradicted her earlier claims about revealing explosive information. This just adds another layer to the whole situation. The way Pam Bondi has been acting lately paints a pretty clear picture. It's not the behavior you'd expect from an attorney general who feels confident in her choices and is ready to stand behind them. Instead, it feels like someone who realizes her decisions aren't defensible and is just hoping that by keeping quiet, the drama will eventually blow over. When the first batch of declassified Epstein files was released, trust wasn't restored at all. Advocates and lawmakers quickly pointed out that these documents seemed more aimed at protecting powerful people than actually informing the public. It's becoming a troubling trend. Silence followed by half-hearted disclosures, followed by monitoring those who are pushing for more transparency. This looks less like a justice-seeking institution and more like a cover-up. Now, let's talk about why the Bondi scandal is such a big deal for the upcoming midterm elections in 2026. It's really become the focal point for the entire narrative around accountability. The standout point here is that this scandal gives Democrats an emotional argument they haven't had throughout Trump's second term. It ties together the idea of government accountability with the heartbreaking reality of child exploitation. For many voters who are caught up in rises in grocery and gas prices and their everyday struggles, abstract ideas like weaponized government or abuses of power can seem a bit distant. But when the conversation shifts to an attorney general who's hiding the identities of people potentially involved in child exploitation and is unwilling to apologize to the survivors for even keeping tabs on lawmakers who demand transparency, the issue suddenly feels all too real and intensely emotional. Every parent, grandparent, or anyone who cares about children's safety knows exactly what's at stake when the government conceals information about minor exploitation. This understanding sparks a level of political engagement and drives voter turnout that typical governance issues simply can't compete with. The Bondi scandal turns the upcoming election into a deeply personal matter for millions, way beyond any discussions of tariffs or budget disputes. Plus, the aspect of survivors connected to this scandal creates a political environment that's particularly challenging for anyone trying to defend Bondi. Survivors of Epstein's trafficking network have gone through real struggles, and they have been fighting for years to get documents released that could reveal the powerful people involved in their exploitation. When the Attorney General refuses to apologize to these survivors during a congressional hearing and allows redactions that conceal the names they want to see made public, it sends a clear message. She's prioritizing the interests of those powerful individuals over the people who were hurt by them. That's a politically dangerous stance because no candidate, no matter where they're running, can justify it without looking uncaring about child exploitation. The emotional weight of the survivors' stories paired with the dramatic appearance of the heavily redacted documents makes for campaign material that hits harder than any policy debate. Another thing to take away is that the anger over the Epstein redactions crosses party lines, putting Bondi in a tough spot with Republican candidates. They can't count on partisan loyalty to shield themselves from the backlash. MAGA voters who are just as keen on seeing the full Epstein files released share the same frustrations with Bondi that Democrats do. They're all angry because she's hiding the names of those powerful figures involved in Epstein's web. When Republican candidates are asked about Bondi in the upcoming elections, they can't simply deflect by pointing fingers at the Democrats since their own supporters are demanding transparency, too. Their voters want answers about why the Attorney General is protecting powerful people instead of seeking justice for the victims. This shared frustration cultivates a political atmosphere where defending Bondi is incredibly difficult no matter who the candidate is speaking to. And the safe stance is to call for transparency and accountability. That course of action puts pressure on Trump, too, as full transparency could reveal things he and his allies desperately want to keep under wraps. The ironic twist is hard to ignore, and Democrats will likely seize every opportunity to use it in the 2026 campaign. It's quite interesting how the phrase "lock her up," which was such a huge part of Donald Trump's 2016 campaign aimed at Hillary Clinton for her handling of classified emails, has now become a rallying cry aimed at his own Attorney General, Pam Bondi. Legal experts suggest that what she's facing is way more serious than what Clinton was accused of. Clinton was in trouble for mishandling classified information on her private email server, while Bondi is in hot water for allegedly obstructing justice in a child sex trafficking investigation, spying on Congress members, and messing with court orders about document releases. The irony in all of this is just rich. Trump's supporters are now pointing the same chant at one of his key appointees, which surely gives Democrats plenty of material to work with as they craft their campaign messages. What makes it even more pointed is that the accusations against Bondi involve protecting powerful individuals who might have taken advantage of children. This contrasts sharply with the email saga and highlights that the standards Trump set for his rivals should apply even more to his own team when their actions seem to have far graver implications and the victims are much more relatable. When I think about the Bondi situation, it really encapsulates what many voters dislike about the Trump administration style of governance.